came to be used in our everyday lives. Here at the Seymour Historical Society, we thought we would take you through the history of some items that we have on display that you might encounter daily or just might be wondering about. Today, we're going to discuss the history of handkerchiefs, particularly ladies' handkerchiefs. They're not just for blowing your nose. Legend says that Marie Antoinette invented the pocket handkerchief due to her misery of having to leave her homeland of Austria at the tender age of 14 to marry Louis XVI of France. She cried all the way there. Having nothing to dry her tears, she tore pieces of lace from her dress to dry her eyes. And from that point forward, allegedly, she always carried a piece of lace with her in case sadness struck. And that's a great story. But come on, there's no way that no one hadn't used something to dry their eyes prior to 1770. Actually, the first records of what could be considered a handkerchief dates back to the 1st century AD by the Roman poet Catullus, and it was called a sudarium, from the Latin meaning to shield or veil the face and mouth and to wipe off sweat. And it would be tucked into the toga. The timing here is very important. By the 1st century AD, all economic classes, the middle and lower, would have been using them, as access to Egyptian linen was cheaper due to the expansion of the Roman Empire. Prior to the 1st century, Egyptian linen would have only been afforded by the upper class. Handkerchiefs became popularly used in Roman society, and the dropping of one signaled the start of chariot races. As time progresses, into the Middle Ages, the handkerchiefs were still used by the elite classes. King Richard II of England was said to have used square pieces of cloth to wipe his nose regularly. During the Renaissance, the next major time period of note, handkerchiefs were used for hygiene purposes. They would be perfumed to ward off unwanted smells and revived fainted owners from fatigue, but became fashion accessories for the wealthy. This was a fad that spread much like the art of the time, from Italy to Germany and France. Handkerchiefs during the time, the 16th century or the 1500s, among the wealthy became very ornate and elegant, with handmade lace, ornamented with gems, and they would be shown off by being carried in the hand. For example, in 1504, Gabrielle d'Estrées added to the magnificence of her attire on one occasion by carrying a handkerchief worth 1,900 francs, which was incredibly exorbitant for the time period. In the court of Elizabeth I of England, handkerchiefs were meant to show prosperity and status. She received them as New Year's gifts from her subjects, and Elizabeth supposedly carried hankies with gold and silver thread and had an entire vocabulary of gestures for dealing with her staff. Shakespeare even gets in the handkerchief game with Othello.
Iago says, "Nay, but be wise. Yet we see nothing done. She may be honest yet. Tell me this. Have you not sometimes seen a handkerchief spotted with strawberries in your wife's hand?" Othello responds, "I gave her such a one. 'Twas my first gift. Fine linen, cambric, or loincloth, with embroidery or lace along the edge."
But what about that Marie Antoinette? Is any of her story true? Actually, handkerchiefs were rather important to Marie. Up until 1785, handkerchiefs came in all different shapes, circles, squares, triangles, and different sizes. One day at the Palace of Versailles, Marie remarked that the squared handkerchief was more aesthetically pleasing and convenient for her. So, King Louis XVI, wanting to keep his wife happy, you know the saying, happy wife, happy life, issued a decree on June 2nd, 1785, ordering that handkerchiefs produced in France had to be equal in width. By the 18th and 19th century, fashion plates show fashionable ladies clutching cloth in their hands. However, it's not clear if it's a pocket handkerchief or just a kerchief, which was becoming a style trend at the time. And that was used to cover a lady's neck and her bosom for modesty. In the 1920s, Women began to personally embroider their handkerchiefs with flowers and other decorations, while men carried the standard white handkerchiefs. You could use your hanky to signal someone you'd like to meet or give it away as a token of affection. For ladies, the hanky at this point becomes more of a fashion implement than a hygiene tool. And by the 30s and the Great Depression having hit, pretty much the only new item a woman could afford to enhance her wardrobe would be a handkerchief. You could simply change your outfit by changing your hanky. In the World War II era, women would forego their silk stockings so the troops had parachutes. So they built up their wardrobe of hankies. They would cost anywhere from 5 cents to 50 cents and wore them in their breast pockets or draped over a belt as a fashion accessory. The handkerchief of the month was advertised in Vogue magazine, and with the advent of color-fast dyes, this allowed artists to depict flowers to cocktail recipes. You could even celebrate holidays by giving handkerchiefs, and they were sold in special gift cards. Kerchiefs were imprinted with maps of the countryside where bombing missions were carried out. If they were shot down, it acted as an escape map. In both World War I and World War II, soldiers were given hankies to carry and or to give as mementos. After World War II, designers like Christian Dior used hankies as a final touch to the haute couture, tied to the wrist, threaded through the top buttonhole of a suit, or popped from the side pocket of a handbag. In more recent time, vintage handkerchiefs have become collectible items. They can also be used to decorate windows, framed, and I've even seen them sewn together into parasols. I hope you enjoyed this brief history on handkerchiefs. We have many on display at the Historical Society, so please stop on by to see them. Thanks.